Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the cold metal window of the exploration ship Endurance. The planet below looked dead. Red dust covered everything as far as she could see. Wind storms moved across the surface like angry ghosts. Number: plants, no water, no signs of life. The ship's computer had already made its report. Planet Kepler 442c was empty. Nothing interesting here. The Galactic Archaeological Council had marked it as dead space years ago. Other species had visited this world before. They all said the same thing. Nothing to see. But Elena felt different about it. Something pulled at her mind when she looked at this world. She could not explain why. Her instruments showed strange readings that made no sense. Energy patterns that should not exist on a dead planet. Captain Torres walked up behind her. He was a good man, but always worried about following rules. Doctor, we need to move on. The council wants us to check 3 more systems this month. Elena turned around. Her dark eyes were bright with excitement. Captain, look at these readings. Do you see these energy spikes? Torres looked at her tablet. The numbers meant nothing to him. Could be natural. Maybe underground metal deposits. Happens all the time. No. Elena shook her head. These patterns are too regular. Too structured. Look here. She pointed at the screen. Every 47 minutes, the same spike. Same location. Same strength. The captain rubbed his tired face. Elena was brilliant, but she saw mysteries everywhere. Last month she had wanted to dig up an entire moon because she thought the craters looked too perfect. Elena, we cannot stop. At every world it has strange readings. The galaxy is full of strange things. But Elena was not listening. She was studying her instruments again. The readings were getting stronger. Something was happening down there. Something was calling. To her. Dr. Chun walked over from the navigation station. He was Elena's research partner and closest friend on the ship. What are you two arguing about now? Elena wants to explore the dead world, Torres said. I want to follow our schedule. Chun looked at Elena's readings. He was from Earth, like Elena, but he was more careful, more willing to follow rules. These readings are unusual, he admitted. But the council already surveyed this world. 3 different species have been here. They all found nothing. Elena felt frustrated. Why could nobody else see what she saw? The Zelari had visited this world 50 years ago. They were good at finding things, but they only looked for what they expected to find. The Corvin had been here 20 years ago. They were smart and careful, but they gave up too easily when things seemed impossible. Humans were different. Elena knew this deep in her heart. Humans did not give up when things looked impossible. They looked harder. They tried new ways. They refused to accept that something could not be done. Captain, Elena said, give me 1 day. Just 1 day on the surface. If I find nothing, we leave. Torres looked at her for a long time. Elena had found amazing things before. 3 years ago, she had discovered an ancient library inside what everyone thought was just a big rock. Last year, she had found the remains of a lost civilization by following patterns in asteroid fields that other explorers had ignored. 1 day, he said finally. Take Chun and Rodriguez with you. Stay in contact every hour. Elena smiled. Thank you, Captain. 2 hours later, Elena stood on the surface of Kepler 442c. The dust storm had stopped, but the air was thin and cold. She wore a thick environment suit that made her movements slow and clumsy, but her excitement made her feel light as air. Energy readings were coming from a group of hills about 5 kilometers away. Elena and her team walked across the empty ground. Their boots left deep prints in the red dust. Nothing had walked here for thousands of years. Elena, Sean said through the radio, are you sure about this? These hills look natural to me. Elena, stopped walking, and looked at the hills through her binoculars. At first, they did look natural, just big piles of rock and dust shaped by wind and time. But as she studied them more carefully, she began to see patterns. The hills were not random. They were arranged in a circle. 12 hills, all the same height, all the same distance apart. And in the center of the circle was something that made Elena's heart beat faster. A 13th hill, bigger than the others. And its shape was wrong. For a natural formation, too smooth, too regular. Elena had seen similar shapes before in her studies of ancient architecture. "Rodriguez," she said, "start scanning that center hill. Full spectrum." Rodriguez was the team's technical expert. He carried sensors that could see through solid rock. "Scanning now, Doctor." He worked quietly for several minutes. Then he made a sound of surprise. "Doctor, you need to see this." Elena hurried over to look at his screen. The scanner showed what was inside the hill. It was not rock and dirt. It was hollow spaces, corridors, chambers, structures that had been built, not formed by nature. "My God," Sean whispered. "It's artificial. The whole thing is artificial." Elena felt a thrill of victory rush through her. She had been right. This world was not dead. Something had been here. Something had built this place and then covered it with dirt and dust to hide it. But why would anyone want to hide a building? And why had other species missed it completely? The team moved closer to the central hill. Elena's instruments showed that the energy readings were coming from deep inside the structure. Something was still active down there after all these years. Walked around the hill looking for an entrance. Elena ran her hands over the smooth surface, feeling for any sign of a door or opening. The surface felt strange under her gloves. Not quite rock, not quite metal. Something in between. "There," Rodriguez said suddenly. "Look at this." He was standing in front of what looked like a natural crack in the hill's surface. But when Elena looked closer, she could see that the crack had edges that were too straight, too perfect. This was not made by weather or time. Elena pulled out her cutting tools, but before she could use them, something amazing happened. The crack began to widen by itself. Slowly, silently, a section of the hill's surface moved aside like a door opening. Cool air flowed out of the opening. Not the thin, cold air of the planet's surface. This air felt different, older, full of strange smells that Elena could not identify. "Elena," Sean said nervously, "maybe we should go back to the ship, get more equipment, more people." But Elena was already moving toward the opening. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. This was why she had become an explorer. This moment when the unknown opened its doors and invited her inside. The opening led to a corridor that went down into the hill. The walls were smooth and curved, made of the same strange material as the outside. But here Elena could see that the material was not rock at all. It was something that looked almost alive. Patterns moved across its surface like slow lightning. Elena stepped into the corridor. Her suit's lights pushed back the darkness, revealing that the corridor went much deeper than she had expected. This was not just a simple building hidden under a hill. This was something much bigger, much older, much more important than anything she had ever found before. Behind her, Sean and Rodriguez followed reluctantly. They were good men, but they did not feel the same pull that Elena felt. They did not understand that some discoveries were worth any risk. As they walked deeper into the ancient structure, Elena felt like she was walking into history itself. Every step took her further from the known world and closer to mysteries that had been waiting thousands of years for someone brave enough to find them, someone human enough to look where others had not thought to look. Elena had been living in the ancient structure for 3 weeks now. The ship Endurance waited in orbit above, but she spent every day inside the buried temple. That was what she called it now, a temple. The word felt right even though she could not explain why Captain Torres was not happy about the delay. Every day he asked when they could leave. Every day Elena asked for more time. The structure was huge, much bigger than it had looked from outside. Corridors led in all directions, like the branches of a giant tree. Some went deeper underground. Others led to chambers filled with strange objects that she did not understand, but Elena could not find a way deeper into the temple's center. Every corridor she tried led to a wall that would not open. Every door she found was sealed shut. The temple was keeping its secrets locked away from her. Chun worked beside her every day, mapping the corridors they could reach. Rodriguez spent his time studying the strange material that made up the walls. It seemed to be alive in some way. It was warm to the touch and gave off a soft light that made their electric lamps unnecessary. Elena, Chun said as they ate there. Lunch in what they had started calling the first chamber. I think we have learned all we can from this place. Maybe it is time to go. Elena shook her head. She was tired and dirty, but her eyes still burned with curiosity. There is more here. Chun, I know it. This temple is not just a building. It is a puzzle, and I have not solved it yet. She pulled out her notebook and spread her drawings across the floor. For weeks she had been drawing every symbol, every pattern, every strange mark she found on the walls. The symbols appeared all over the temple, but she could not understand what they meant. Some looked like mathematical equations. Others looked almost like star charts. Still others seemed to show the movements of planets and moons. But when Elena tried to match them to any known mathematical or astronomical systems, nothing fit. Look at this, she said, pointing to a group of symbols near the temple's main entrance. These symbols appear in the same order in 7 different locations, but each time, one small detail is different. Chun looked at the drawings. He was a good scientist, but he did not have Elena's gift for seeing patterns. Maybe they are just decorations, art. No. Elena was certain. Whoever built this place was trying to tell us something. These symbols are instructions. I just have to figure out what they mean. That night, Elena could not sleep. She lay in her small tent inside the first chamber and stared at the temple's glowing walls. The light seemed to pulse slowly, like a heartbeat. Like the temple was alive and dreaming. She got up and walked to the nearest wall. Up close, she could see that the light came from thin lines that ran through the wall material like veins. The lines formed complex patterns that seemed to shift and change when she was not looking directly at them. Elena pressed her hand against the wall. The material was warm and smooth. It felt almost like skin. As she watched, the light patterns under her hand began to change. They moved toward her fingers, as if responding to her touch. Suddenly, Elena understood something important. The temple was not just responding to her presence. It was studying her, learning about her. The symbols on the walls were not just decorations or instructions. They were tests. Elena spent the next day looking at the symbols with new eyes. If they were tests, what were they testing? What did the temple want to know about her? She started with the symbols that looked like star charts. Elena had studied astronomy since she was a child. She knew the positions of stars as seen from hundreds of different worlds. But these star charts did not match any current star positions, she knew. Then she had an idea. What if these were not current star positions? What if they showed how the stars had looked in the past? Elena rushed back to the ship and used the computer to calculate star positions from thousands of years ago. She tried different time periods, working backward through history. 10,000 years, 20,000, 30,000 at 50,000 years in the past. She found the match. The star charts on the temple walls showed exactly how the sky had looked from this planet 50,000 years ago. Elena felt her heart racing with excitement. The temple was that old, older than most civilizations in the galaxy, older than any human-built structure, by tens of thousands of years. But why would the builders put ancient star charts on their array? Walls? Elena studied the charts more carefully. Each one showed the sky at a different time of year. Together, they formed a calendar based on the movement of stars across the sky. Elena returned to the temple with new equipment from the ship. She used the ship's computer to calculate exactly when each star chart would have been accurate. Then, she noticed something amazing. The temple had been built to align with specific astronomical events. At certain times of the year, when the stars were in exactly the right positions, beams of sunlight would have entered the temple through hidden openings and fallen on specific symbols. Elena realized that the temple was not just a building. It was a giant astronomical instrument, a machine for measuring time and tracking the movement of celestial bodies. But it was more than that. The temple was also a lock, and the star positions were the key. Elena spent 2 more days calculating star positions and mapping the temple's internal structure. She discovered that the sealed doors and blocked corridors were connected to a complex mechanism that responded to light patterns. When the stars were in the right positions, light would enter the temple and hit specific symbols in a precise sequence. This would trigger the mechanism and open the way to the temple's inner chambers. But there was a problem. The stars were no longer in the right positions. 50,000 years had passed. The sky had changed. The key no longer fit the lock. Elena sat in the first chamber and stared at her calculations. Any other explorer would have given up. The temple could only be opened during specific astronomical conditions that no longer existed. It was impossible. But Elena was human. Humans did not accept impossible. She remembered that the ship's computer could project artificial light patterns. If she could not wait for the real stars to align, she would create her own stars. Elena spent the next day positioning portable lights around the temple's exterior. She calculated the exact angles and intensities needed to recreate the ancient star patterns. It was delicate work that required perfect precision. Chun and Rodriguez helped her, though they thought she was wasting time. "Elena," Chun said as they adjusted the 100th light projector, "even if this works, how do you know the temple will respond to artificial light?" Elena wiped sweat from her forehead. "I do not know, but I have to try." That evening, as the planet's sun set and darkness covered the temple, Elena activated her artificial star field. Beams of light struck the temple's walls at precisely calculated angles. The light entered the temple through openings that had been invisible during the day and fell on the symbols exactly as they had 50,000 years ago. For a moment, nothing happened. Elena felt her heart sink. The temple was not responding. Her plan had failed. Then the walls began to glow brighter. The light patterns under the surface started moving faster, flowing like rivers of brightness toward the center of the temple. A deep sound came from somewhere underground, not mechanical, but organic, like a giant creature waking up from a long sleep. The sealed doors began to open. Elena watched in amazement as corridors that had been blocked for 50,000 years revealed themselves. The temple was coming alive around her, responding to the artificial stars she had created. She had solved the puzzle. She had found the key. The temple was ready to share its secrets. Elena picked up her equipment and walked toward the newly opened passages. Behind her, Chon and Rodriguez followed in stunned silence. They were about to become the first beings in 50,000 years to enter the heart of an ancient temple. Elena felt no fear, only excitement. She had always believed that any puzzle could be solved if you looked at it the right way. Now she was about to discover what lay beyond the puzzle. What had the temple's builders been trying to protect? What secrets had they hidden away from the galaxy for so long? The answers waited somewhere in the darkness ahead, and Elena was ready to find them. Elena walked through corridors that had been sealed for 50,000 years. The air smelled of things she could not name. Old things. Ancient things. The walls around her pulsed with light that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. It was as if the temple knew she was there and was welcoming her deeper into its secrets. Chun and Rodriguez followed close behind her. Their voices were quiet and nervous. They had seen many strange things in their years as explorers, but nothing like this. The temple felt alive around them. The walls seemed to breathe. The floor was warm under their feet, even through their thick boots. "Elena," Sean whispered, "the air in here is different. My suit's sensors show it is safe to breathe, but how is that possible? This place has been sealed for thousands of years." Elena did not answer. She was too focused on what lay ahead. The corridor was leading them downward, deeper into the planet's core. The light in the walls was getting brighter with each step, and she could hear something in the distance. Not a sound exactly, but something that touched the edges of her mind like a whisper. They reached a massive chamber that took Elena's breath away. The ceiling was so high that their lights could not reach it. The walls curved around them in a perfect circle, covered with symbols that moved and shifted like living things. In the center of the chamber stood something that made no sense. It looked like a tree made of crystal and light. Its trunk was thick and twisted, reaching up into the darkness above. Its branches spread out in all directions, each one ending in a cluster of glowing orbs that pulsed with different colors: blue, green, gold, red, purple, colors that Elena had never seen before and could not name. But the most amazing thing about the tree was that it was clearly not natural. Someone had built it. Someone had designed it. And someone was still taking care of it. As Elena walked closer, she could see that the tree was connected to the chamber's walls by thousands of thin threads of light. The threads carried information back and forth between the tree and the temples. Systems. The tree was the temple's brain, its heart, its soul. "My God," Rodriguez breathed. "What is it?" Before Elena could answer, the tree began to change. The lights in its branches grew brighter. The colors shifted and swirled. And from somewhere, within the crystal structure, a voice spoke. "Welcome, young seeker. I have been waiting for you." Elena's team froze. The voice was speaking their language, but it did not sound human. It was deeper than any human voice, with harmonics that made their bones vibrate. And it seemed to come, not from the air around them, but from inside their own minds. "Who are you?" Elena asked. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. The tree's lights pulsed in response to her words. "I am Kethmur, last of the architects, guardian of this sanctuary, keeper of the knowledge that was." Elena felt her heart racing. The architects were a legend, a myth, ancient beings that some believed had built the first civilizations in the galaxy before vanishing without a trace. No one had ever found proof that they had really existed. "The architects are real," she whispered. "We were real," Kethmur corrected. "Most of my people moved beyond the physical realm long ago. They became beings of pure thought and energy. I chose to remain behind in flesh and crystal, waiting for someone worthy to find this place." Elena looked around the chamber with new eyes. This was not just an ancient building. It was a sanctuary built by beings older than most of the galaxy's civilizations. A place where knowledge from the dawn of galactic history had been preserved. "Why did you wait?" Elena asked. "What were you waiting for?" The tree's lights dimmed slightly, as if Kethmur was remembering something painful. "My people made a great mistake. In our desire to grow beyond the limitations of physical existence, we lost something precious. We lost our ability to create, to dream, to see possibilities where others see only problems. Kethmer's branches shifted, and Elena could see shapes forming in the crystal, images of the architects as they had been millions of years ago. Tall, graceful beings with elongated limbs and faces that seemed both alien and strangely familiar. They had built great cities among the stars. They had shaped worlds and guided the evolution of countless species. We became perfect, Kethmer continued, but perfection is a trap. When you become perfect, you stop growing. You stop changing. You stop being truly alive. Elena understood. She had seen this before in her studies of ancient civilizations. Species that became too comfortable, too set in their ways, eventually stagnated and faded away. But the architects had not faded. They had transcended. They had become something else entirely. What does this have to do with us? Chun asked. He was still nervous, but his scientific curiosity was overcoming his fear. Your species is young, Kethmer replied. But you have something my people lost long ago. You have chaos. Beautiful, creative chaos. You refuse to accept that anything is impossible. You find solutions where others see only problems. You grow stronger through conflict instead of weaker. Elena felt a thrill of pride. She had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was their refusal to give up. Now an ancient being older than recorded history was telling her she was right. I have studied your species through the temple sensors, Kethmer said. I watched how you solved the puzzle of the Starlock. Other species have visited this world. The methodical Corvin studied every inch of the surface, but could not see the patterns hidden in plain sight. The intuitive Zelari felt the temple's presence, but could not understand its purpose. Only humans combined logic with creativity in the way needed to unlock the door. Elena walked closer to the crystal tree. Up close, she could see that Kethmer's consciousness was housed in a complex network of crystal formations that grew throughout. The tree's structure. It was beautiful and alien and slightly frightening all at once. What happened to the other architects? She asked. Where did they go when they transcended? The tree's lights flickered with what Elena recognized as sadness. They exist now as pure consciousness in the galactic core. They manipulate space and time and matter with their thoughts. They guide the evolution of species and the formation of stars. They have become gods. That sounds wonderful, Rodriguez said. It is terrible, Kethmer replied. They no longer feel joy or wonder or curiosity. They no longer create art or music or stories. They exist, but they do not live. They have power beyond imagination, but they have forgotten what it means to dream. Elena began to understand why Kethmer had remained behind. The architect had seen what his people were becoming and had chosen a different path. He had chosen to stay connected to the physical world, to preserve not just knowledge, but the capacity for growth and change. Why are you telling us this? Elena asked. Because my people are coming back, Kethmer said, and his voice carried a note of fear. That chilled Elena's blood. The transcended architects have become aware of your species. They see humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy. They see your technology advancing at an unprecedented rate, and they have decided that you represent a threat to galactic stability. Elena felt cold despite the warmth of the chamber. What kind of threat? The threat of chaos, of unpredictability, of change. The transcended architects believe that the galaxy should evolve in an orderly, predictable fashion. They guide species along predetermined paths toward eventual transcendence or extinction. But humans refuse to follow any predetermined path. You create your own destiny, and that terrifies them. The implications of Kethmer's words hit Elena like a physical blow. humanity was being judged by beings of incredible power. Beings who saw human unpredictability as a dangerous flaw to be corrected. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Not long. They are already moving. Ships of pure energy are traveling from the galactic core toward human space. When they arrive, they will offer humanity a choice: accept their guidance toward transcendence, or be eliminated as a threat to galactic order." Elena felt anger rising in her chest. Who were these architects to judge humanity? Who were they to decide that human creativity was a flaw to be corrected? "There is another way," Kethmer said, as if reading her thoughts. "I have spent 50,000 years preparing for this moment. This temple contains all the knowledge of the architects from before their transcendence. Technology beyond your current understanding. Weapons that could hold even the transcended beings at bay. And most importantly, the key to transcendence itself." Elena's eyes widened. "You are offering to make us like them?" "I am offering you the choice they never had," Kethmer replied. "The choice to transcend while keeping your humanity. To gain their power without losing your souls. To become more than you are without forgetting what you were." Elena looked at Chon and Rodriguez. They were staring at her with wide eyes, waiting for her to make a decision that could change the fate of their entire species. But Elena knew she could not make this choice alone. This was too big, too important for one person to decide. This was a choice that belonged to all of humanity. "I need to contact my ship," she said. "I need to speak to Earth. This decision cannot be made by one person." Kethmer's lights pulsed with approval. Spoken like a true human, even when offered godhood. "You choose to share the responsibility. This is why my people chose correctly when they designed this temple to respond to your species." Elena sat in the crystal chamber for 3 days, speaking with Earth through the ship's communication systems. The conversation had started with Captain Torres and the ship's crew, but it quickly grew to include the highest levels of human government. Scientists, philosophers, military leaders, and ordinary citizens all wanted to understand what Elena had discovered. The response from Earth amazed her. Instead of panic or fear, humanity reacted with curiosity and determination. They asked hundreds of questions about Kethmer and the architects. They wanted to understand everything before making any decisions. During those 3 days, Kethmer shared more of his people's history. He showed Elena visions of the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, when the architects had been young and full of wonder. She saw their great cities floating among the stars, their art that combined technology with living beauty, their music that could make planets sing in harmony. "We were explorers once, like you," Kethmer told her as they watched images of ancient architect ships discovering new worlds. "We believed that the universe was full of infinite possibilities waiting to be discovered. We celebrated chaos and creativity. We thought that growth and change were the most precious things in existence." Elena watched the visions with fascination. The young architects had been remarkably similar to humans in their approach to the unknown. They had taken risks, made mistakes, learned from failure, and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "What changed?" she asked. The visions shifted, showing the architects at a later period in their history. They had become incredibly advanced, but something was different about them. They moved with cold precision instead of joyful curiosity. Their cities were perfect but sterile. Their art was technically flawless but emotionally empty. "We discovered transcendence," Kethmer said with sadness in his voice. "The ability to exist as pure consciousness, free from the limitations of physical form. It seemed like the ultimate achievement, the final step in evolution." Elena saw the moment when the first architects underwent the transcendence process. Their physical bodies dissolved into energy, and their consciousness expanded to encompass vast regions of space. They gained incredible power and knowledge, but they lost something essential in the process. At first, we thought transcendence was wonderful, Kethmer continued. The transcended architects could manipulate matter and energy with their thoughts. They could travel instantly across the galaxy. They could see the future and the past with perfect clarity. But gradually, we realized what we had lost. The vision showed the transcended architects as they were now, beings of pure thought that existed in the galactic core, manipulating the development of entire civilizations. Like pieces on a game board. They were incredibly powerful, but they were no longer truly alive. They had become cosmic forces of nature instead of living beings. They lost their capacity for surprise, Kethmer explained. When you can see all possible futures, nothing is unexpected. When you can understand everything perfectly, nothing is mysterious. When you can control everything with a thought, nothing challenges you to grow. Elena understood. The transcended architects had gained ultimate power, but they had lost the very qualities that made life worth living. They had become perfect, and perfection was a kind of death. Why did you choose to stay behind? She asked. Kethmer's crystal form pulsed with warm light. Because I remembered what we had been. I remembered the joy of discovery, the excitement of facing the unknown, the satisfaction of overcoming impossible challenges. I could not bear to lose those feelings, even if it meant remaining limited and mortal. Elena felt a deep respect for the ancient being. Kethmer had chosen to remain incomplete rather than become perfect. He had chosen growth over stagnation, life over mere existence. The transcended architects see me as a failure, Kethmer continued, a being who refused to evolve beyond his primitive limitations. But I see them as the failures. They achieved ultimate power, but they forgot how to use it for anything meaningful. The conversation with Earth continued through the second day. Elena transmitted everything Kethmer had told her, including detailed scans of the temple's technology and the knowledge stored within its crystal matrices. The response from humanity was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from every corner of human space. Scientists wanted to study the architect technology. Philosophers debated the meaning of transcendence. Artists were inspired by visions of the architect's ancient culture. And ordinary people shared their thoughts about what humanity should do when faced with this incredible choice. Elena was amazed by the diversity of responses. Some humans wanted to embrace transcendence immediately, seeing it as the next step in human evolution. Others rejected it completely, arguing that humanity should remain true to its chaotic, unpredictable nature. Still others proposed middle paths, ways to gain power without losing humanity. But what impressed Elena most was that no one expected her to make the decision alone. Even though she had discovered the temple and made first contact with Kethmer, humanity recognized that this choice belonged to everyone. On the third day, Kethmer shared the most important revelation of all. The transcended architects are not coming to offer you a choice, he said. They are coming to evaluate whether humanity deserves to exist at all. Elena felt her blood run cold. What do you mean? The crystal tree's lights dimmed as Kethmer accessed memories that were clearly painful. The transcended architects believe they are the guardians of galactic order. They guide the evolution of species along predetermined paths. Most species eventually transcend or die out naturally. But some species, like yours, refuse to follow the prescribed pattern. Images appeared in the crystal, showing other species that had faced the architect's judgment. Elena saw worlds where entire civilizations had been destroyed because they were deemed too chaotic or unpredictable. The transcended architects had eliminated them as threats to galactic stability. They call it gardening, Kethmer said with disgust. They see themselves as gardeners tending the galaxy, removing weeds that grow in unwanted directions. Elena felt sick. The transcendent architects were not gods. They were tyrants who had appointed themselves as judges of which species deserved to live. Humanity's rapid expansion and technological development has caught their attention. Kethner continued, "Your species advances in ways they cannot predict or control. You solve problems in ways they never considered. You create art and music and stories that follow no logical pattern. To them, you are the ultimate weed." The implications were terrifying. Humanity was facing not just the offer of transcendence, but the threat of extinction. It transcended. Architects would judge human civilization and decide whether it was worthy of continued existence. "How can we fight beings of pure energy?" Helena asked. "How can physical beings stand against gods?" "By becoming something they do not expect," Kethner replied. "The knowledge in this temple includes technologies that even the transcendent architects do not fully understand. Weapons that can harm energy beings, defenses that can protect against their manipulations, and most importantly, the secret of controlled transcendence." Elena felt hope returning. Controlled transcendence? The process of gaining transcendent power while retaining physical form and emotional capacity. Kethner explained, "It is what I attempted to achieve, but I lacked the necessary knowledge. The temple contains the complete research my people conducted before they chose the path of pure transcendence." The crystal tree pulsed with excitement as Kethner accessed files that had been sealed for eons. Elena saw technological diagrams that made her head spin with their complexity. Weapons that could channel the fundamental forces of the universe. Shields that could deflect attacks from beings of pure thought. And most amazing of all, the process for enhancing human consciousness without destroying human nature. With this knowledge, humanity could become the equals of the transcendent architects, Kethner said. You could gain their power without losing your souls. You could transcend while remaining human. Elena transmitted everything to Earth, watching. As humanity's greatest minds struggled to understand technology that was millions of years beyond their current level. But she knew they would figure it out. Humans had always been good at taking impossible challenges and finding ways to overcome them. "There is one more thing you must know," Kethner said as the third day came to an end. "The transcendent architects will not come alone. They will bring with them the accumulated power of millions of years of evolution. They will test humanity not just in terms of technology or military might, but in terms of wisdom, creativity, and the strength of your convictions." Elena nodded. She understood that the coming confrontation would be about more than just survival. It would be about proving that humanity's chaotic, unpredictable nature was not a flaw to be corrected, but a strength to be celebrated. "When will they arrive?" she asked. "Soon," Kethner replied. "I can feel their approach like a storm on the horizon." "But do not despair, Helena Vasquez. Your species has something the transcendent architects lost long ago. You have hope, and hope is the most powerful force in the universe." Elena stood in the crystal chamber as humanity made its choice. For 7 days, people from every corner of human space had shared their thoughts through the ship's communication systems. Scientists, farmers, artists, children, soldiers, philosophers, and ordinary citizens had all contributed to the greatest conversation in human history. The response had surprised everyone, including Elena herself. Instead of fear or panic, humanity had reacted with curiosity and determination. They wanted to understand everything about the architects and their technology. They asked thousands of questions and debated hundreds of possibilities. But most importantly, they refused to be intimidated. "The vote is complete," Captain Torres announced through the communication system. "The results are overwhelming. Humanity chooses to face the transcendent architects as equals, not as supplicants." Elena felt pride swelling in her chest. Humanity had been offered the chance to submit to beings of incredible power, to accept guidance and protection in exchange for giving up their independence. Most species in the galaxy would have accepted such an offer without question, but humans had chosen the harder path. "We will take the architect knowledge," Elena said to Kethmer. "We will use it to defend ourselves and to become what we were, meant to be, but we will do it our way, on our terms." The crystal tree pulsed with approval. "I hoped you would choose this path. It is the choice my people should have made millions of years ago." Kethmer began the process of transferring the temple's knowledge to human computer systems. The information was vast beyond imagination. Technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level, weapons that could channel the power of stars, medical knowledge that could extend human life indefinitely, and at the heart of it all, the secret of controlled transcendence. "This knowledge will change your species forever," Kethmer warned. "Are you certain you are ready for such responsibility?" Elena thought about the question seriously. The knowledge Kethmer was offering could be used to create or destroy on a scale never before imagined. In the wrong hands, it could corrupt humanity just as thoroughly as pure transcendence had corrupted the architects. But Elena had faith in her species. Humans had always been good at handling great power responsibly. They made mistakes, certainly, but they learned from those mistakes and grew stronger. And most importantly, they never stopped caring about each other. "We are ready," she said. "We may not use this knowledge perfectly, but we will use it with good intentions. And we will never lose sight of what makes us human." The transfer took 3 days to complete. Elena watched in amazement as her ship's computers struggled to contain information that represented millions of years of scientific advancement. But gradually, piece by piece, the knowledge of the architects became part of human civilization. Scientists on Earth began studying the new technologies immediately. They worked in teams, sharing ideas and building on each other's discoveries. It was exactly the kind of collaborative effort that made humans unique in the galaxy. But even as humanity absorbed the architect knowledge, Elena knew that time was running out. Kethmer's sensors had detected the approach of the transcended architects. They were still weeks away, but their presence could already be felt like a weight pressing down on the galaxy. "They are coming faster than I expected," Kethmer said, with concern. "Your species' rapid absorption of our knowledge has alarmed them. They see it as proof that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to exist." Elena felt a chill of fear, but she pushed it aside. Fear would not help humanity now. Only determination and creativity could save them from the approaching threat. "What will they do when they arrive?" she asked. "They will present themselves as gods and demand humanity's surrender," Kethmer replied. "They will offer transcendence as a reward for submission and threaten extinction as punishment for resistance. Most species accept their offer immediately." Elena smiled grimly. "Then they do not know humans very well." Over the following days, Elena watched as humanity prepared for the confrontation with incredible speed and efficiency. The new architect technologies were being integrated into human systems at a rate that amazed even Kethmer. Ships were being upgraded with energy shields and weapons. Soldiers were being trained to use devices that could manipulate matter and energy. Scientists were working around the clock to understand the process of controlled transcendence. But most importantly, humanity was staying united. Instead of fragmenting under the pressure, human civilization was pulling together like never before. People who had been enemies were now working side by side. Nations that had been rivals were sharing resources and knowledge. The approaching threat had reminded humanity of what they all shared. "Your species continues to surprise me," Kethmer observed as he watched reports from across human space. "Most civilizations fall apart when faced with such overwhelming challenges, but yours grows stronger," Elena nodded. Humans are at their best when things seem impossible. We thrive on challenges that others would find overwhelming. The Transcended. Architects arrived on a Tuesday morning, appearing in the space above Earth like shadows made of starlight. Their ships were not made of metal or crystal, but of pure energy held in shapes that hurt to look at directly. They radiated power that could be felt from millions of kilometers away. Elena watched from the temple as the first communication came from the transcended beings. Their message was broadcast simultaneously to every human world, spoken in a voice that seemed to come from the fabric of space itself. People of Earth and the human colonies, we are the architects, guardians of galactic order. We have come to offer you transcendence. Accept our guidance, and you will be elevated beyond the limitations of physical existence. Refuse, and you will be removed as a threat to galactic stability. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. The ultimatum was exactly what Kethmer had predicted. Submit or die. Accept transcendence or face extinction. It was the same choice that had been offered to countless species throughout galactic history. But humanity's response was unlike anything the transcendent architects had encountered before. Instead of a single reply from human leadership, they received millions of individual responses. Every human with access to communication technology sent their own message to the transcended beings. The messages varied wildly in content and tone, but they all conveyed the same basic sentiment. Humanity would choose its own destiny. Elena smiled as she listened to some of the responses. A farmer from Mars told the architects that he preferred growing food to becoming a god. A child from Europa asked if transcended beings could still eat ice cream. An artist from the asteroid belt said that perfect beings could not create imperfect art, which was the only kind worth making. The cumulative effect was overwhelming. Instead of the fear and submission the architects expected, they received a flood of curiosity, defiance, humor, and stubborn determination. It was the most human response imaginable. This is unprecedented, Kethmer said with something like joy in his voice. No species has ever responded to the architect's ultimatum with such ... creativity. Elena could feel the confusion radiating from the transcended beings in space above. They had expected either immediate submission or terrified resistance. They had not expected to be questioned, challenged, and in some cases, mocked by beings they considered primitive. The human response escalated when scientists began broadcasting their analysis of the architect ships. Using the knowledge from Kethmer Temple, they had discovered that the transcended beings were not as invulnerable as they appeared. Their energy forms had weaknesses that could be exploited. Their power, while vast, was not unlimited. The architects are not gods, the broadcast announced. They are very advanced beings who have convinced themselves they are perfect. But perfection is static. We are dynamic. We grow. We adapt. We overcome. Elena watched as humanity's upgraded. Ships began taking positions around Earth and the other human worlds. The vessels looked small and primitive compared to the architect's energy constructs. But Elena knew they carried weapons and shields based on technology that predated the transcended beings. The confrontation that followed would be remembered for millennia. The transcended architects, beings of pure thought and energy, faced off against humans who had chosen to remain physical while gaining transcendent power. It was a battle between perfection and potential, between stagnation and growth, between the old gods and the new inheritors of the galaxy. But the most important moment came not during the fighting, but during a pause in the conflict when the lead architect attempted to communicate directly with human leadership. "Why do you resist?" the being asked. "We offer you perfection. We offer you power beyond imagination. We offer you freedom from the limitations that bind you to this crude physical existence." Elena, speaking for all humanity, gave the reply. That defined her species' place in the galaxy. "We do not want to be perfect," she said. "We want to be ourselves. We want to grow and change and make mistakes and learn from them. We want to feel joy and sadness and wonder and fear. We want to create things that surprise us. We want to love and lose and hope and dream. Perfect beings cannot do any of that." The architect was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice,